boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call. WTVOradio.com, WNFFradio.com, brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the church, and as goes the church, so goes the nation. As goes the family, so goes the entertainment industry. As goes the family, so goes business. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Hey, good to hear you this morning. Great day, great day. Rivalry football Sunday. Sorry. I'll get into that a little bit.
Go blue.
Yeah. Kevin unfortunately was I know that he was born and raised in Michigan, but he's got enough of it in him that he can't get it out of him.
Born in Michigan, raised in Indiana, moved to Ohio.
Yeah.
Transplanted into hostile land.
Yeah, hey, if you want to, speaking of hostile, if you want to call in 614-423-4220, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Your opinion does matter because we're in a war for the opinions.
As long as you support blue.
Yeah, opinions vary. Hey, we lost a warrior this week. Well, the opposition lost a warrior this week. Charlie Rose, my favorite morning news program, two witches and a warlock, lost their warlock this week. And it's kind of ironic. God does have a sense of humor, doesn't he, Mr. Anderson?
I think he does, yes.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking an awful lot about the feminization of America and what's happening and what we think's what's trying to happen. We really do need to avoid things that are going to get very, very out of balance. We've got a great guest coming on, Greg Hopkins, and we're having him on today because Greg is, in terms of the areas that we want to talk about this morning with the lawyers, with the judges, with the police, everything relating to law and how these new revelations and accusations are affecting that. It's going to be very interesting to talk about that. We probably need to talk about taxes a little bit. Some of our readers may recall the massive scandal in 2001 surrounding the bankruptcy of the Enron Corporation, the company based in Texas. Investors lost an estimated $63 billion with a B. When investigators discovered the Enron officials and auditors of the Arthur Andersen accounting firm had knowingly and unethically used loopholes in the law and various accounting tricks to hide billions that had been lost in bad deals and debt from shareholders. In March of this year, and this is related, the Office of Inspector General released a report regarding the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And that report revealed that an audit of HUD's 2000 and 2016 consolidated financial statements were riddled with so many pervasive material errors as to be unacceptable. Errors which totaled nearly $520 billion, which means maybe they lost it, maybe they didn't. They don't know where it is. $520 billion. The audit report contained 11 material weaknesses, keep hitting my mic here, Mr. Anderson, 7 significant deficiencies, and 5 instances of non-compliance in applicable laws and regulations. The report noted that initial HUD's 2015-16 numbers were so error-ridden that they needed to be sent back and re-released as restated consolidated reports. Think about the IRS and you saying, oops, pardon me, I made a mistake. Yeah, it was only $100,000, but I just lost it. I couldn't account for it. You guys will be okay with that, right?
Yeah, lost quarters in the couch.
Mm-hmm. Weak internal controls, they tell us. Although the errors in the initial report amounted to $278 billion in misstatements in financial notes, a $500 million error in statements of budgetary resources, and $19.5 million in discrepancies of line items of the report that differed from what was submitted for the audit. This corrected and reinstated consolidated. I'm sorry, folks. This is just insane, and is not just the HUD department. There's no accountability here. This is just crazy. By the way, speaking of money, ESPN lost 480,000 subscribers in October. 480,000 subscribers. That'll bring you to your knees. Yeah? Oh, former Oklahoma State Representative Ralph Shorty has reached a plea deal with federal prosecutors months after investigators uncovered a secret life they say involved child pornography and rendezvous with 17-year-old boy he had met through Craigslist personal ads. Shorty, a Republican who resigned last spring under allegations that he had solicited sex from the teen, will plead guilty to child sex trafficking charge, his attorney, Ed Blah, said. Prosecutors will drop 3 child pornography charges as part of the plea deal. Now, if you're a civilian and you get... look what happened to Charlie Rose. Look what's happening to everybody else that's accused of sexual harassment. But what's happening to them? Are they talking about dropping the charges, or are they adding charges? Man. And we're going to talk about the family today. What's happening in America today, especially to the sexes, ought to be a concern for all. God, or some ancient aliens, made the first man and woman and meant for them to be together and procreate. And for one man, I'm glad that Adam wasn't gay. Oh my goodness, what kind of humanity would we have had? Well, wait a minute. We wouldn't have had humanity, would we? Unless God, of course, my favorite Martian, returned to try it once again. So Back to the Future, in round 1 of Women versus Men, 21st century version. Think about this now. We are talking about zero tolerance for sexual harassment. And please, it is meant only for males. Boo-hoo, oh, boo-hoo, BJ's worried about the males. I'm not just worried about the males. I'm worried about what this is going to do, primarily to the family structure. Can you imagine being in a work environment? And I think I mentioned last week, how do you look at a woman? You can't look her. Maybe you can look her in the eyes, but don't do that too long because she might misinterpret that. And don't drop those eyes below the eye. Don't drop your eyes below her eyes. God help if you do.
Don't look down.
Yeah.
Look up.
Yep.
Run into walls.
Yep. Feminization. If you're wondering where all this harassment is headed, let me give you a hint. I lived through the 60s and 70s. If it feels good, do it. The same era that Bill Clinton lived through. Peace, love, joy, and understanding. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you made an inappropriate advance towards a lady, a male passage requirement, by the way, one of 3 things was going to happen. You were going to get slapped. Whatever happened to the slap, Mr. Anderson?
Oh, it became into lawsuits.
Did it? Okay. Or you could have gotten a swift kick in the 5-hole or just above it. Or you're going to get lucky.
Hey.
It was a time when virginity was on its way to extinction. And dating was seen among boys as a game of baseball. First base, second base, third base, and the home run. And that's the way it was, as Walter Cronkite would say. Look, for the most part, at least for what I can ascertain, Harvey Weinstein, boy, if you don't call now, you never are, 614-423-4220. For the most part, from what I can ascertain from reports, Harvey Weinstein did not physically and forcibly rape the women that are blaming him for it. It was their greed and fear, financial fear, as to what would happen to their careers that caused them the woes they have today. And they have no one to blame but themselves. What were they doing with Harvey Weinstein in the first place? And all the other people you're talking about. What were they doing with him? Why were they talking to him? Why were they encouraging him to act on their friendly behavior? Women victims could cause this nation our soul. And we need to be very careful what we do in the next step. Right now, how can we elect a heterosexual male?
Good question.
Given the assumed proclivities. Or how about a business leader, a teacher, a pastor, entertainer? The list goes on. Remember the high school days, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I sort of do.
When it's kind of foggy, isn't it? Remember who the girls wanted to date? The stars, the football stars, right? The baseball stars.
Yeah, the hunks.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. They put on those tight sweaters for them.
Uh-huh. And everybody else noticed, right?
Well, not me. I didn't look.
Have you ever heard of women marrying for money?
That sounded like some plan a few have.
Yeah. Well, what about it?
Well, they had to put on a show to attract that
Uh-huh.
money man.
Yep. And of course, we arrest women on the streets that exchange love for money, don't we?
They do get arrested.
614-423-4220. I've got to be getting some calls this morning, Mr. Anderson.
There was interesting stuff last week about selling virginity on the internet.
That's right. But that's okay. Because
It's my body.
it's her body.
I can do what I want
Right.
to. Do
And
what I
that's
want
what
to.
that's what Harvey did.
Oh, we got a call. Shall
Yeah.
I bring it straight
Well,
in?
that's probably Greg calling in. And let's go ahead and answer that. Greg, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, hang in there, brother. We're going to take a quick break and let everybody know who we are. And then we're going to get back with you. And we've been talking about the feminization of America. And we want to talk to you about how that's going to affect our judicial system, our lawyers, and our law enforcement. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. WNFFradio.com. Have I got that right, Mr. Anderson?
You do.
All righty. We'll be right back.
And just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
And we are back with author Greg Hopkins, who received his first firearms training as an auxiliary police officer in his hometown of Waverly, Ohio. Go Bucks! Where we also, I got my Buckeye T-shirt on today, Greg.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, go Bucks. Big Michigan.
He also, you're in Alabama now, aren't you?
Oh, yes. Been in Alabama since '85.
What are you going to do?
Still,
Go ahead.
My daughter goes to the University of Alabama, but when they played for the national championship, I informed her that I was rooting for the Buckeyes, and she said, Well, I better go somewhere else to watch the game. That would be a good idea.
A separated family. We talk about family here a lot. Shame on your daughter. Shame on your daughter.
That's right.
Greg, you served on city council. You've got a law degree. You've been a magistrate. You've been a prosecuting attorney, and you're now it always hurts me when I say this. Now you're a lawyer. Oh, that hurts so much.
Well, I'm a recovering lawyer. I like to tell people. What I do now is I train armed short security teams in use of force law. I work on trying to make my book an international bestseller, and I also train concealed carry permit holders in the law of self-defense of Alabama, just as I did the Huntsville Police Department when I was city prosecutor there. And from time to time, I do expert witnessing in firearms and self-defense cases.
Okay. We've got an avalanche, a tsunami of women victims coming to the forefront. And I'm really concerned about how this is going to change the attitudes of police enforcement and lawyers in general and judges. And you've got that background. You've touched on all those areas. How do you see this? Or maybe I'm overreacting. First of all, do you see this could possibly affect the way men are treated if this continues?
Well, I think the best way to compare it, BJ, is to look back at the late 1980s, mid 80s to the forward, when police began to be sensitive to the domestic violence situation.
Okay.
It was found, there's a famous study done in 1983 called the Kansas City study. And what it found was that the police had been called to domestic violence situations without making an arrest up to, in one case, 17 times before the man murdered the woman. Okay? And no arrest had been made. And a couple of things changed after this Kansas City study got out about how little attention, it's just a family thing. Police need to get involved. Studies began to come out, and it was found that police needed to do intervention. So by the time that I had been a prosecutor for a few years, Alabama, during the 1980s, things changed. Alabama was one of the last states in the 80s to say that to change the law that a woman could not claim rape against her husband. Now in every state, a spouse can rape a spouse and be criminally charged for it. We begin to see this, but also there was more hiring of female police officers, because it was actually found and experienced that if a male and female officer went to a domestic violence scene, it tended to calm both parties down. And especially it made the women more forthcoming about, pressing the charges. Now, however, as I said, I did well over 1,000 easily. It was more like 2,000 or higher than that in 7 years, domestic violence cases, and in minimum 50% of the cases, the women wanted to drop the charges. And I say, I'm sorry, lady, not your case anymore, my case. But we got serious about it, and we got a handle on it. Now, with all this publicity, we're going to be looking at practical ways in law enforcement to deal with this kind of thing. But in these kind of situations, they are the charges are in many cases often felonies, and depending on what type of sexual harassment, how sexual harassment is defined in your state, it could actually be a felony. And then you have a whole nother dynamic that the victim and the the perpetrator.
But in a lot of cases, and I appreciate your input, we're not just talking about domestic issues, especially
Right.
today. But in the domestic cases you were talking about, and again, I'm obviously a solid proponent of the natural family. How did that affect the relationships in the family? Did it improve them? What you were talking about? Did it create stress there? If you're in a situation, Greg, is what I'm saying. What I'm going to say is, if you're in a situation where the husband and wife are at the point where they're doing physical damage to each other, where can we go from there? What can happen? I mean, you can do counseling, but I think a lot of this could have been prevented up front. And I can get a little more detail on that if you want.
It's like my brother one time was filling out a psychological exam to get a scholarship, and it said complete these sentences, and one of them said men and women, and he finished it by saying make really good teams if they do proper scouting before the draft.
Ah, okay, you're going exactly, and that's so important. I mean, first of all, I grew up in the '60s and '70s,
sure, me too.
and it was just an incredible time to grow up, because in terms of sexual license, I mean, the pill was there, and it feels good, do it, and geez, you're not hurting anybody, but you didn't recognize that a solid. When we talk about the natural family, we talk about one man, one woman, in a committed relationship, monogamous for a lifetime.
Right.
And the marriages today, which end up 50% of marriage in divorce, I don't know how many marriages where the man and the woman are both, number one, virgins, and number two, they've taken a good look at what they're getting themselves into. Most of these folks have already lived together, which is interesting because they already got one foot out the door. Don't recognize it. They're living in an uncommitted relationship, which means at any time you can leave.
You see, this is the problem, is when we don't think about marriage as a lifetime commitment, then we tend to think of it more as well, if it doesn't work, I can always take the TV back to the shop.
Right,
kind
right.
of thing. And in a domestic violence situation, you have women who literally believe that men are allowed to beat them up, and men that believe the same thing. And the women believe that their options for success outside of marriage are so small that it's better for me to stay with this guy who keeps me, in food and a roof over my head, and put up with it. Now, you have a very similar situation when you get Harvey Weinstein or some other powerful mega producer and a young starlet. Because I'm not, I'm not trying to perjure these people or anything, but let's face it, if you're out to be an actor, an actress, you're a whore, okay? The vast majority of them, you will literally do anything for fame. If anyone ever watched the movie Fame back in the early 80s, it was a sad movie. I walked out of there just distraught that the kids were 17, 18-year-old would do anything for that movie. And there's been surveys for 30 years on Olympic athletes. Would you rather take steroids and die when you're 40, and win a gold medal and have all the fame and the money, or would you, or would you rather live to your 80?
Yep.
And they say, "Oh yeah, I'd rather have the fame."
Yep.
So
Yep.
and this is men and women, and so they will put up with these things just like a battered spouse, in order to say, "Okay, this is temporary. I put up with this icky stuff right now, and then later on, I will get what I want." And of course, this is always Satan's lie that it's this in this particular business. This is just how you pay your dues, and so it's a tough situation there because the victim is participating.
It is. And I brought that point up earlier, and I kind of sideways talked about prostitution on the street about a woman selling love for money, and some women marry for money. They marry for money. Some marry star athletes, and that doesn't seem to work out. Geez, I wonder why.
Yeah.
And when you when you go into those domestic situations, if you're a police officer, if you had a law in America that said, okay, you can get a divorce, but it's going to cost you everything you have, and we ought to apply that to the pastor that married them as well. You're going to lose your church as well. I'm half kidding here, but
that would be a good idea.
if there's a commitment, if they make a commitment, they have a contract. All right, you have a marriage contract, and we want to discourage you from getting married if you shouldn't be married, and we want to discourage you when you get married from just leaving, walking out the door. We want you to stay there and work it out for the sake of you too, but also your children, and you should have known that before you started. So here's the law. If you want a divorce and you both agree to it, that's fine. We're going to take everything you have, including your children. So sign here, and we'll take care of this for you.
I worked for, I clerked in law school during the summers for divorce judges in Birmingham, and 1/3 of all the divorces every year granted in this whole state of Alabama are granted in Birmingham, Jefferson County. It was sad.
Wow.
But the thing here is, if we teach people, and one of the judges said, if I had my druthers, I'd give the kids the house and make the parents move in and out every other week.
Give them foster parents. Give them foster parents.
Ted Nugent did that when he was divorced.
Really?
When he divorced his first wife, he had the money and everything. He gave his ex-wife a house. He had a house. The kids had a house, and they moved in and out with the kids. And his kids ended up really well adjusted and okay. But most Americans can't afford that.
Yeah.
The point here is something my daddy taught me when I started college. He said, "Son," it says, "now the first job of a man with a woman is to protect her." It said, "and the first person you need to protect any girl you date from is you." Okay.
Ooh.
He
great
said,
advice. Great advice.
Then he sat me and my fiance down about a month before we got married. We were at my folks' house, and she said, "I want to tell you something, Greg." He says that being a husband is a lot like being an elder in the church. He says it is not so much a position of authority as it is a position of responsibility.
Yeah. Go ahead.
See, my wife and I are both old school people, and I'll tell you quite freely. I'll tell your audience. I was 9 days short of turning 30 when I got married. Mm-hmm. My wife was 24. We were both virgins on our wedding night, and here we are, 32 years later, 32 and a half years later, and so God does not speak to no purpose. Isaiah 55, my word goes forth, and it shall not return to me unless it accomplishes what I have sent it out to do. And if we follow God's laws, when your divorce rate in America is 50%, but if you look down, if you have Christians who attend church every time that they can be there and they pray together, the divorce rate is 2%. Okay, so if you have families that just go to church together, the divorce rate's only 10%. All right, so there is with the Lord is stability. He's the owner. He wrote the owner's manual. That's something I point out in my book. And if the owner's manual says change the oil every 5,000 miles, well, it's not up to us to decide, well, hey, I only do it every 50,000 miles. Yeah. My car.
That's right. That's right. So you're saying there might be a direct relationship between the advice given in the Bible and your ability to conduct yourself in this life in a positive manner. Is that what you're saying to us?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like and then it translates to these kids. Sally Struthers. I remember reading in Reader's not in the TV Guide. in maybe a year after All in the Family got started, they had an interview with her, and she said the first agent I went to said, "Okay, take off your blouse and show me your breasts." And she goes, "No." And she said, right then, I said, "I'm going to get me a woman agent." Okay. Now, if that's 1970. Okay. Then
wow.
if you have to go into any profession having certain objective, basic beliefs, I'll do this, I won't do that. And it's, I remember it was already well known I was moving out of the city attorney's office to go to to private practice at this point. But one of my colleagues, who was the HR director, she'd formerly been in our office as one of our attorneys, she said, "Oh, you have to take sexual harassment training." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, but everybody has to. I said, "No, it's an insult." I said, "Look, I'm a Christian and a gentleman." I said, "You can ask any woman I've worked with in this entire building and in the other building." I said, "They will not be one, but I'm not treating them like a lady. If they do, they should feel free to slap my face off." I said, "But for me to sit through one of those seminars and you tell me that I'm a sexual aggressor and I can't control it," I said, "I will not put up with that." And she said, "But you have to." And I said, "Make me." And I walked out. Of course, everybody knew I was leaving in 3 weeks, so nobody ever did anything about it. But at some point, you have to. I had lawyers that would laugh at me because when I was in private practice, "Oh, your clients pay you in cash and you actually report it to the IRS?" I go, "Yeah, that's what the law is, and Christians are supposed to obey the law." And they just kind of shake their heads and laugh at me. And there are, it's like when mom and dad, if you're a lawyer, for instance, and you're presenting evidence with your defendant, you cannot have them perjuring themselves. Just the well of justice comes from truth, and if anyone lies, it poisons the well. And the problem is that a lot of lawyers will sit there and say, "Oh, a half truth is okay." So if the cop says, if I say, "Well, I told the cop I had 2 beers," well, yeah, that was on your way to 10. Yeah, you did have 2 beers, but there ain't more after that.
So that's why that never worked. That's why that never worked.
Yeah, we were into the family in a construction zone. I had 2 beers. One was a 44-ounce tall boy, and within 45 minutes he had a 20-ounce. And so he had literally a gallon of beer in an hour. 2 beers. Okay, so and you see, if mommy and daddy don't teach us that a half-truth is a whole lie, but long before we ever get to junior high, then when someone says, "Hey, if you let me feel you up, then you're going to get this $1 million contract that is going to start a career, and there's no telling where it might go," then I'll say, it's a little temporary discomfort for. And we trade our spiritual birthright for a bowl of lentil soup, just like Esau did.
We lie to ourselves. I mean, that lying isn't just for other people. We do a lot of lying to ourselves. And Greg, whatever happened to the slap? I did an unofficial survey of some women this week, and I asked them, "Well, what if somebody come up and grabbed a certain part of your body that it's a little." Well, you shouldn't be grabbing.
Excellent question. This is part of the entire feminization of America, but but it's actually Marxist. It's based in Marxism.
Ooh.
And it's the idea that evil is not to be actively resisted. How many times have you heard, BJ, and your listeners, "Violence never solves anything"? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I would like to talk to Tojo and Hitler about that. The nation of France is free today because violence obviously solved something. You see, ask all the black people in the United States that have been free from slavery for 152 years. Okay, violence does solve something. We have a country here with a Constitution, a Declaration of Independence that tells us violence solves some things. And sometimes, in certain situations, you have to say this ends here, and it has to end emphatically. And sometimes, when that 8-year-old kid screws up his little face and clenches his little fist and says, "No, I'm not going to do it," well, it's time for that big fleshy part that's on the back of his high part of his legs to meet Daddy's hand. I'll never forget another piece of wisdom from my dad. Back in '68, the CBS News was having a 3-part documentary, 3 hours, and it said, and it was about the generation gap. And I said, "Mom, generation gap, and I want to watch this because I watched the news. I was really into the news and everything." She said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "How come, Mom?" She says, "Well, look, we got a real good thing going here, a real fine relationship with your mom, with your parents, and your brothers, and you, and that might give you ideas in your head that could cause problems and things later on." And I said, "Okay." So Dad was out fixing the car. I walked out with my dad, and he's working on the car. I said, "Hey, Dad, what is the generation gap?" He said, "That's very simple, son. That's the difference from my right hand to your rear end."
Yeah. And that's, and following the slap thing, you can be told no, but you really don't know they're serious until you get the slap. And then you go, "Oh, you mean no."
Yeah, that's right. But now colleges tell people that if a boy and a girl are making out, well, then you have to reevaluate the situation, and the girl must give specific permission, and the boy must obtain specific permission to do X, Y, or Z every 10 minutes. This is what some college. Those are college handbooks, And instead, we need to train our young men to respect women and to protect women, and first of all, from themselves, and then second of all, for women to stand up for themselves and say, "Hey, I'm worth more than that." But when you and it has a lot to do with the compromises that are made socially as well. If you're dealing with a fraternity or sorority situation, the very first thing your kid does is they go to college, they obtain a fake ID so they can drink until they're 21. It's that's a big industry on every campus is fake IDs, and what does that do? It compromises your judgment. The only two things alcohol does is compromise judgment and reduce inhibitions. Now, that's and then you get into a situation, and you're already 2 strikes and no balls on you, and waiting for the pitcher to come in with a third.
And that's not a double entendre. Go ahead.
No. But see, this is the problem. We before we ever send our kids off out of the house, we have to say, "You are valuable. You are infinitely valuable."
No, we don't. We don't have to say that, Greg. It's not our job. It's the school's job to do that, not you. It's the school's job to tell your children what to do, or the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts. But it's not your job. You're just a parent. And I want to. One of the things that I want to get into is we are growing yet another larger victim in the United States. The victim is now the female who is totally helpless, cannot do anything on her own. Yet we're supposed to make her the president of a company. We're supposed to put her in a leadership role. I don't understand it. This is counterintuitive. If they're helpless and they can't do anything for themselves. No, I'm not saying that women ought to be going around 24/7 slapping men. Okay, of course, women would say, "Well, yeah, that's what we should be doing because they deserve it 24/7." But we have to do something about what's about to happen in our world with this victim. And we're already hearing about the government getting more involved in it. We're hearing, if you listen to my favorite morning program, I call it Two Witches and a Warlock, although they're missing their primary warlock, the CBS Morning News, Charlie Rose. But they're already talking about, we've got to do something for women. We have to do something for women.
I'm starting to lose you, BJ. It's something's fuzzing out here.
Okay. Is that any better at all?
Yeah, there
Okay,
you go. There
okay.
you go. Yeah.
But I'm just trying to say that I'm really afraid of what's going to happen in our society with the relationship between men and women. How can you possibly go into a work environment and even talk to a woman without having fear of saying something wrong or maybe touching her accidentally in the wrong place? How do we avoid what I see as just an incredible tsunami of laws that are gonna belittle men and exalt women artificially?
Well, the problem here it goes back to affirmative action,
Right.
which Nixon,
Right.
and of course affirmative action is applied to every supposed oppressed minority. The problem with affirmative action from the very get-go has been that whoever affirmative action is applied to, then the people who have actually worked hard and have done the job and everything are passed over. And as we debated, the Bachman decision was before the Supreme Court. It was a white law student that got bumped out of the University of California law school system for a black applicant simply because he was white and simply because the applicant was law school. Now, since that time, Bakke went ahead. He got the law school eventually. He became a lawyer, and by now he's retired as a lawyer. The guy that they bumped him for was disbarred later on. Now, that doesn't mean that happens every time with affirmative action. But as I told people when we were discussing this in undergrad school in the late 70s, I said, look, who do you want landing your 747? The guy that got put in simply because the government said he should be there. Who do you want doing your triple bypass?
Excuse me.
It was, and once we leave a meritocracy, then we open ourselves for the collateral damage of you cannot challenge me, even though I'm simply not qualified for the job. Now, this happens with both men and women. I tell people all the time, that there's always a 50-50 chance that your doctor or lawyer was in the bottom 50% of his class. Okay, but at the same time, if they got there on their own merits, then we can assume at least a basic level of performance.
Right.
But with and so what happens is we do because of everybody's got in the back of the head. Well, he got this position, she got this position because it's an affirmative action hire. Then they automatically, whether people consciously do it or not, they automatically have a prejudice saying this person is not up to speed. And I literally I had to deal with it as a prosecutor. I applied we had an opening for city court judge, and they hired a woman who was a fine lawyer, outstanding lawyer, but in domestic situations. All she'd ever done since she got out of law school was divorce work. She didn't know thing one about municipal criminal law.
Right.
And so I tried to help her as prosecutor. And I'd say, Judge, if you do this, then here's what's going to happen. And then da-da-da-da-da-da. And she didn't listen to me. And after a year and a half, she was gone. Now, she's a very nice lady and everything. But at the same time, you get other judges who they understand they're not qualified. And so they put the black robe on, and we lawyers call it robe-itis. You put a black robe on a man, all of a sudden he thinks he's God, And whereas the black robe, you don't have to throw your weight around. You don't have to act like Judge Judy, because everybody knows you're a 500-pound gorilla. You know, you can look at people instead of screaming at people. You can say, "Son, this is the way it's going to be," because whatever you say goes. But unfortunately, I think you've seen it, BJ, and all your listeners have seen it, that unqualified people, even when they reach a point of responsibility and respect, somehow they're never comfortable in the role, and they have to push a little harder in order to make themselves believe. And consequently, they're not necessarily the best bosses, and they're not necessarily the best judges or administrators.
I agree, and we're going to have to take a break, and we'll play a little clip during that break. I don't know whether you're going to be able to hear it or not, so put yourself on mute if you will, and when we come back, we'll continue this, and if you want, we can talk about a book you wrote. We don't have to, but if you want, we can talk about it. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Last call. WTVOradio.com.
WNFF.com.
WNFFradio.com.
Yeah, forgot the radio.
Do you think that women who voted for Hillary, women who have strongly supported the feminist movement and supported the left, are feeling disenfranchised given the current climate of sexual brutality and oppression brought to light in Hollywood recently?
So I think that people have a willingness to blind themselves to facts that they don't want to see. And so what I've seen a lot is people saying, well, the problem of sexual harassment isn't unique to Hollywood and has nothing to do with our culture regarding sex, a leftist culture regarding sex. No, it has to do generally with men. Right? It has to do generally with American society. It has to do generally with power relationships. It's funny how everybody is willing to generalize as soon as their ox is gored. Right? As soon as the left sees, wait, our culture, our feminist culture that we said that we were going to promulgate and was going to protect women hasn't protected women, nearly at all. Then all of a sudden it turns into, well, it's not us that sin, it's men that sin. Right, and so I've been getting a lot of this online in the last couple of days. It's you men who haven't stood up, and I keep saying, like, what do you want me to do, and I'll do it. Really, what do you want me to do? Like, if you show me a rapist like Harvey Weinstein allegedly is, then I will say send him to jail or castrate him. Right? Like, this is not difficult. But if you just say to me, you don't acknowledge the rape culture, again, I need you to define that, and I need you to explain to me what I did. Like, really? I didn't do anything. And I think the vast majority of people in this room didn't do anything. And if they did do something, then maybe people should report it to the police, because that seems to me the best way to root out evil is to actually have law enforcement get involved. So the left is, so the question of what the left is doing about this, do they feel disenfranchised? No, I think they're just going to blame the same people they always blame, because we're all in our own little bubbles. Should they feel disenfranchised? 100%. Because in a society that treats sex as transactional, in a society that basically reduces sex to any sort, just a physical transaction that is based solely on consent, it makes it very difficult to explain why it is that the casting couch in Hollywood is bad per se. Right? There's actually, like, feminist theory says that it's bad because of power imbalances, but the sort of libertarian culture of the left suggests that power imbalance doesn't have anything to do with it. If I feel like trading my body for a part in a movie, well, that's my business. And if you say differently, then you're slut-shaming me. Right, so that's, well, you can't really have it both ways. Either it's bad or it's not bad. And if we are going to fight sexual harassment and sexual assault, it seems to me that we have to do a couple of things. One, we have to reinvest sex with value beyond just a physical transaction. It's not just two people who are getting each other's rocks off. It actually means something beyond that. There's a relationship that's attached to it. And beyond that, I think that we need to re-inculcate in men themselves, not just the teach men not to rape routine. Like, again, it's such a weird concept. Like, when I was 11, my dad didn't sit me down and say, son, don't rape people. Like, if you have to teach your child that, my guess is that you got a bigger problem than that on your hands. What my dad taught me was to be a gentleman and to treat women with respect. And that has to do with being a gentleman and recognizing differences in sex roles. Because one of the things that's happened is that traditional masculinity, the idea that it is a man's job to protect women, this is one of our jobs as human beings, as men, to protect women, the feminist movement doesn't like that. Well, then you can't blame us for not protecting women if you don't want us to protect women. Like, I want to protect women. I think men should protect women. I think one of the reasons God put man on earth is to protect women. okay, well, then it is incumbent on me to protect women. But if you're telling me that I can't even open a door for a woman because this is somehow an offense to her honor, and that if I say that it's man's job to protect women, that this is somehow reinforcing gender stereotypes, then don't come whining to me when bad stuff happens. Because the answer to bad behavior is good behavior. The answer to vice is virtue. The answer to vice isn't just yelling and hashtagging crap.
We are back. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. I hope you heard some of that, Greg. I tried to make it so you could. Could you hear any of that?
Yeah, I thought I heard a little bit of it, but you know, I'm hard of hearing, so it's tough. But it was good what I heard.
Well, let's see, a lawyer hard of hearing. Yeah, I could buy into that.
I haven't been in the courtroom since 2005, so and that was one of the reasons I quit. I couldn't hear her anymore. So,
oh my goodness. Okay,
but,
A Time to Kill: The Myth of Christian Pacifism by Greg Hopkins. Christian pacifism? We got about 9 minutes. So tell us a little bit about your book, Greg.
Well, as you know, BJ, the Christians have been kind of messed up with this idea of pacifism, and there are various pacifist groups, Quakers, who are not cowards by any means. That they were in the forefront of the anti-slavery movement. Mennonites and Amish. The Mennonites and Amish were actually volunteered for starvation studies during World War II because the doctors were trying to figure out how these prisoners who had been starved for so long, you can't give them a full meal, it'll kill them. So how to bring these people back from this extreme weight loss and everything like that. They volunteered to starve themselves and so on. Of course, the combat medics, Hacksaw Ridge movie, which is a wonderful, uplifting movie, it tells a true story of a pacifist there, but rather that pacifism was a man-made idea that came along in the late 2nd century, and it was never taught by the Bible or by Jesus, and nor by any of the New Testament writers. When Jesus says, turn the other cheek, he's talking in context there in chapter 5 of Matthew about building relationships, making new relationships, and repairing broken relationships. The Greek word for the slap he talks about is repizi. It is a slap of correction, such as you would give to a smart aleck child. Okay, there is a servant that has done something extremely wrong. It is not someone who's got a fist who's trying to actually break your jaw. It is not an assault, criminal assault. Rather, it is an insult. The other thing to remember is he says it smites you on your right cheek. Well, if to smite you on your right cheek, I have to hit you with my left hand. And for 5,000 years before Jesus, the left hand was what you used to wipe your butt with. See? Yeah. And so it is an insult. You're saying to someone, you're not worth cow flop to me. And so we turn the other cheek in order to show that person and any observer that we have the power to punch him back or slap him back, but we're not going to do it. We're going to be the bigger man. The same thing with live by the sword, die by the sword. Jesus said, look, when you went out on your former missions, did you need anything? I told you not to take your wallet, don't take your backpack, don't take your sleeping bag, and how things go. Oh, what great, Lord, everything was super. He says, now, what are you talking about now? He says, well, I'm about to go away. Okay, and in 50 days, I'm going to ascend, and y'all are going to be, it's you and God, you're going to need some swords. And people go, oh, those swords are figurative. Well, he says, you should also need a wallet and your backpack. Okay, are the wallet and backpack figuratively? They're not going to need any money. They're not going to need a place to sleep or a tent. And so I show through the entire Bible that God commands us to defend the innocent with all legal force and literally blesses us. Look at Genesis 14 when Abraham slaughters the kidnappers of Lot. He comes back to Salem where the representative of God is Melchizedek, and Melchizedek blesses him in the name of God, and he's got the blood of the kidnappers on his hands. See? And it is after that he kills all these kidnappers that God, in chapters 15 and 17, finalizes his covenant with Abraham. So it's simply the fact that we kill bad guys does not make us anything bad in the sight of God. And that's one of the reasons why I have 4 chapters on Jesus in the military. When the centurion came to Jesus and said, please heal my servant, and you don't even have to come under my roof. You just speak, and you can do it by remote control. Jesus, I believe you. We're told it's the only time Jesus was ever surprised. And he said, but the arrogant, did he say to the guy, okay, but before I heal your servant, you got to quit the army. You know, he never told anyone to quit the army. John the Baptist didn't tell the temple guards that came to him and said, what should we do now that we're going to follow this coming Messiah? He said, be content with your wages. Don't extort money from people. Don't use your position to steal. And he never told him to quit the army. The very first Gentile convert, another centurion, Cornelius, and he was not told by Peter to quit the army. And people we have supposedly 22 veterans a day who commit suicide. Our military needs to know before they ever swear that oath and go to boot camp that God knows the difference between murder and killing in combat law enforcement or self-defense. And that killing in combat law enforcement and self-defense is an act that God blesses. He does not condemn. Okay? And then finally, the book has 3 chapters on the Bible and the death penalty. I spent 2 stints on the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, 2 years before I came here to Huntsville to be city prosecutor, and a year and a half back between 13 and 15. And so I know the appellate system as well, and I explained what the Bible says about the death penalty. And Jesus endorsed it. Paul endorsed it. It's endorsed right on through to Revelation, from Genesis 9:6. If man sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. And that's a command. If you read shall in any statute today, it means must. Okay? So the book will help Christians and Jews. I just sent a copy to a Jewish friend, a conservative Jewish friend, and it will help both groups not have hesitation about this anymore and understand where God stands on the idea of self-defense. When that guy jumps out of an alley with a knife, that's no time to all of a sudden start thinking, now, is Jesus going to be okay with this if I blow this guy away? You got to settle that one before then.
A Time to Kill by Greg Hopkins. Is that book still available? Can people purchase that?
It's available on Amazon, and we, if I'm not mistaken, we have dropped the price on the Kindle version. And if you have the ebook reader, go to Barnes and Noble, and you can get it in that format in their ebook section. Any bookstore can order it for you, but you probably get your best price on Amazon there. And all I ask is you buy one for yourself, one for your preacher, one for your Sunday school teacher, one for the church library. That's it. Just 4 copies. The Christmas time's coming up, so if you have someone, this would be an excellent gift for anyone you know that's interested in firearms. Any veteran, please. I mean, if they're a World War II vet, it would help them to read this book.
I appreciate your time this morning, Greg. Again, Greg Hopkins, the name of the book is A Time to Kill, and we really appreciate your expertise, and I hope some of the folks were listening. You had some very, very good words of wisdom. Greg, again, thank you for taking the time this Saturday morning, and we'll both be watching.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and God bless you and all your listeners.
My pleasure, brother. Go Bucks.
Okay, go Bucks.
Go Blue.
Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Anderson, you're fired again. Thank you, Greg.
Once a year.
Thank you, Greg. We'll be back shortly. We're going to talk. Second hour is family hour, so we're going to talk a little bit about the family and what all this may have an influence with the family, the feminization or the feminization of America. Be sure to stay tuned. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, WNFFradio.com. Or you can get us on the phone. What is it?
605
475-0017.
There you go. Thanks for finishing it.
Six 614-423-4220 if you're so inclined. Ladies' Day. Call in, ladies. We're calling you out.
Defend your honor.
Yeah.
Last Call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life on WTVOradio.com.
I had this story up last week, which I thought was very, very humorous. We were talking about police and law enforcement this morning. 2 weeks ago in Detroit, undercover cops posing as drug dealers got into a public brawl with other undercover cops posing as drug buyers. WJBK, the local Fox station, called the fight, which involved drawn guns, flying fists, and at least 24 officers, a case of good guys going after the good guys. Only in America. Only in America. I was talking about feminization, and I did some research, and with regards to the he said, she said subject today.
Did you get slapped in your research?
No. But I didn't discuss it with anyone.
Oh, okay.
And I posed the question earlier, and excuse me, this is really important. How do the recent flood of accusations and confessions, if you will, affect the way businessmen, educators, newscasters, pastors, parents, judges, government officials, how's it going to affect the way they do their job? And don't tell me it's not going to. And don't tell me it's necessarily going to be better. Is America destined to become an official femination, where everything we look at is through the template of women? Well, that ain't so bad, BJ. Got to be a balance, and in terms of the family, you've got to have that structure. Feminization, also known as sissification, is used to describe the practice, especially in female dominance, of switching the gender role. Oh, is that what we're trying to do here? You better believe it. In the Garden of Eden, that's right. That's where it started. I heard one of you out there. That's exactly where it started. Oh, of switching gender role of male or to male submission. The male in such a process is sometimes and informally known as a sissy. Feminization, we can't use that word anymore, can we, Mr. Anderson? Feminization is usually achieved via cross-dressing, where the male is dressed in female attire, ranging from just wearing female undergarments to being fully dressed in very feminine attire, including makeup, hairdress, and nail polish. Some males take on task behaviors and roles that are overtly feminine and adopt female mannerisms and postures and tasks such as sitting, walking, and acting in a feminine manner. The emasculation may be coupled with punishments such as spanking, and heightened submission to submitting to males. Begging and pleading to stop the feminization may be part of the fantasy. That is a little extreme. Or is it? Is it? What's happening to America? What is all this about? Why all of a sudden are we talking about Harvey Weinstein and others? Why is it we're talking about them? It's been happening for decades. And now we're noticing? I don't have the answer to the question. If you do, 614-423-4220. I don't know what the answer to the question is, but my instincts say it's not good, that there are not good intentions here. Do I think there's some kind of a cabal? No, not yet. Or the Illuminati is behind this? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe it's a reaction to something that happened to somebody, say, Hillary Clinton? Maybe? I don't know. All I know is that can be very damaging to the family.
That's probably the ultimate goal.
Yep. Here's how this works. And you're going to see more of this coming. And I guess you could put this under the category of two wrongs don't make a right. And I was wondering, after the Boy Scouts officially admitted girls into their clubhouse, what kind of a reaction we would get from the Girl Scouts as a result of the gender theft. Well, apparently the official response from the Girl Scouts of America is to not force your daughters to hug relatives and guests. Nope. These young girls are not going to hug Aunt Auntie, and certainly not Uncle Al, who just arrived, unless, of course, the young ladies feel like it. Here's some of the reasoning. Think of it this way. Telling your child that she owes someone a hug, either just because she hasn't seen that person in a while, or because they gave her a gift, can set the stage for her questioning whether she owes another person any type of physical affection. When they bought her dinner or done something else seemingly nice for her later in life. No girl is going to seriously think that she has to get physical with a guy to be polite, just because she had to give Aunt Betty a hug at Christmas when she was little, said one female reader of the girls about, this is on their Facebook page, the Girl Scouts of America Facebook page. Another hyphenated female parent wrote, if an adult is seriously offended by a child not feeling comfortable with a hug, they need to grow up. Of course we all want our kids to be loving with kind. But doing something that doesn't feel right to them just because an adult wants you to do it is wrong. No children that feel like they should be able to smoke, change their sex, have a beer. The Girl Scouts said that its advice on opting out of hugs was not meant to be portrayed as a license to be rude, but it emphasized that there were ways other than physical contact to show gratitude and love. Saying how much she's missed someone, or thank you with a smile, or a high five, or even an air kiss, are always ways she can express herself. And it's important that she knows if she gets too close and feels most comfortable to her, that she doesn't have to do that. No, but we're not done yet with the Scouts. And again, very quietly, very discreetly, you know what's happening here? You know what the Girl Scouts are doing? Think natural family. That's right. They're usurping parental authority. They're also answering the question, at what age should consent be taught? The Girl Scouts regularly publishes statements and blog posts on the website about topics that might interest girls in their development as future leaders, from the importance of voting to how to recover from natural disasters. The post about hugging was published in a section that includes advice to parents and families about current events and was intended to highlight the need to teach children about genuine affection and consent in early life. According to who? Well, according to the Girl Scouts of America. The organization said in an emailed statement on Wednesday, such events include the event news stories about sexual harassment and have risen in national discussion. The post had outsized reach, generating interest far beyond the organization membership of more than 1.8 million girls and their families. The Today Show started an online poll on Wednesday asking respondents whether they agreed with the Girl Scouts' stance on hugging. The poll generated more than 3,000 votes by noon and continued through the day. God help us all. Girl Scouts and children are deciding who gets hugs and who doesn't. Really? Yet another attack on the natural family. When these children get in their golden years, speaking of later in life, they will then understand how harmful their selfish actions were, but by then it'll be too late. In the meantime, we can add this step parenting to our list of women who are being sexually attacked, especially when it comes to giving Uncle Al a hug. I'd sent you something this week, Mr. Anderson, about Christians. And it's interesting because there's Bible verses, several, that talk about when a Christian meets a Christian, they don't give them a hug.
Give them a holy kiss.
They give them a holy kiss. Now, Mr. Anderson, I love you, but you ain't getting a kiss from me.
Stay over there in that chair.
Yeah,
will you?
yeah. You might get your feet washed, but you ain't getting a kiss from me. And I'm old-fashioned. If I see my daughter holding another gentleman's hand when she's young, or your granddaughter, I'm a little concerned. That's just me. I'm old-fashioned. And if I see that same granddaughter hugging that gentleman, I get a little more concerned. And if she's kissing him, well, so...
That's when you get your shotgun out and polish it?
Right. In all things, balance, right? To me, I'm old-fashioned. I see those things as affectionate. And you're going to have to make a decision yourself, but I see that as affectionate. And I get concerned about it. But again, that's just me. I'm old-fashioned. But as a nation, what should we think about that? If that's Harvey Weinstein growing up and holding your daughter's hand or hugging her or kissing her, well, you can answer that question. You can answer that question. It's just interesting where we are in this society. Christians don't kiss one another. Is that wrong? The Bible says it, and not once, not twice, but at least 4 times, that you're supposed to give them a kiss. Doesn't even relate to gender.
Well, there are cultures that do that.
Yep. I got Biker Bill's is commenting on Biker Bill is a hugger. He doesn't give courtesy hugs. He's a hugger. And fortunately, he's in Michigan. And my wife is here in Ohio. So we're okay, Bill, right? Right, brother? But it's again, it's really strange how far we've come. And this thing about kissing in the Bible, I'm scratching my head out of that. Well, the Bible says it's okay, but and I think Biker Bill and I talked about there's a guy in his church that likes to kiss everyone. And I don't know, man. I don't think I'm going to be going to that church. Or at least maybe I'll go to it. My wife won't. Anyway, when we get back, I'm digressing here. We're going to talk about a couple items. There's, and you're probably not aware of this, a U.S. congressman has initiated a parent rights amendment. It's something we may or may not be interested in. And when we come back, break, we're going to talk about it. And I thank our guest today. This to me, this is a huge item. What's happening here? We are taught in the Bible in Ephesians of an order. It's Jesus Christ, men, women, children. And Rome got into trouble, got into huge trouble when they made that horizontal relationship. It became men, women, children, government, you name it. Everyone is equal. Everyone's the same. There is no structure. There's no authority. And when you have a society like that that has anarchy as their base, and you have another society that doesn't, that has that vertical structure, you're going to lose every battle. Because first of all, your residents are going to be fighting themselves as versus the enemy. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. WNFFradio.com. 614-423-4220.
For call in, talk to us.
Or if you want to give us a hug. Yeah, but no kisses.
No kisses. Hershey kisses.
Yep.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. 25 years ago this month exactly, Bill and Hillary Clinton took control of the Democratic Party, and they basically run it with a few exceptions ever since. It's been a long time. Here's a look back.
I still believe in a place called hope.
I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
I can state unequivocally that, as my husband has said, these are false allegations.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Yes.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy.
What difference at this point does it make?
I feel your pain.
This was the biggest nothing burger ever. Thank you, and may God bless you and the United States of America.
If you're a recent college graduate,
okay. Thanks,
that's
Mr.
your
Anderson.
entire life.
Three things you need to know today. I copped this from CBS Morning News, by the way. Three things you need to know. The tax bill Congress is proposing will cost the taxpayer and not save them money, regardless of what they pass, if they pass anything other than gas. The Russians did not interfere with the last presidential election. And we live in an amoral society. Three things you need to know. The Lutheran Resettlement Agency that places United Nations refugees into dozens of U.S. cities and towns is working with the world's largest meatpacking conglomerate. It's Brazilian-based, by the way, to train refugees for work in 4 American states, while also softening up the local natives to be more welcoming. Give them a hug and a kiss. The under-the-radar pilot program between Baltimore-based Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services and the U.S. subsidiary of JBS, SWIFT, aims to pump more refugees into Georgia, Texas, Iowa, and Michigan to work in the company's meat plants. If successful, the pilot program will be renewed for a second year and replicated at JBS meat plants across the U.S. This is a report from WorldNet Daily. JB Swift is a Brazilian-based global meat processing giant that agreed to pay Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, which is LIRS, $155,000 to implement the pilot program over the next year in 4 states. This is according to the report. And that's right, that's a tax-free religious agency is being paid by a foreign global corporation to train refugees and ultimately transform the demographics of small towns in Americas. Now, this will not only affect the culture of towns that will be invaded, but also, well, the politics, helping to make the semi-rural areas in America a tad bluer, if you know what I mean. The deal between the global meat processor JBS and the Lutheran agency has been dubbed Rebuilding Dreams. Words mean things, don't they? And is described in a draft document as a grant and collaboration agreement between JBS USA and LIRS in the 4 states. The primary goal of the agreement is to improve capacity of Jobs USA and local resettlement agencies to support and improve the hiring and retention of refugee employees at 4 pilot sites in Michigan, Texas, Iowa, and Georgia, according to the document. And this is going to affect like Iowa, Council Bluffs, Marshalltown, Michigan, Plainwell, Georgia, Eberton, Douglas, Athens, Texas, Waco, Lufkin, Pittsburgh, and Mount Pleasant. Rebuilding Dreams, the program, will achieve this goal by creating customized training and resources for key stakeholders, building stronger relationships through communication and technology platforms, enhancing the collection and evaluation of data, and improving the overall quality and culture of the workplace experience for the refugee employees. The agreement also calls for improving the local welcoming culture in the cities where the refugees will be placed. Do you understand what's happening here, Mr. Anderson?
I don't know if I really do.
We're basically transforming America. And who's benefiting from this? Businesses, right? And churches. And we're going to bring foreigners in that don't speak our language, that are going to take away our jobs, and they're going to assimilate into our society. It's going to dilute what we have already. And no, if you're a Christian, these aren't mostly Christians that are coming in, folks. They'd be more apt to go after Sharia law than to obey the Constitution. JBS, the meatpacking company we're talking about, is a transnational global corporation that beats the United Nations substantially drum on its website. It also cashes in on globalized labor mobility concept pushed by the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. By the way, under that 2030 Agenda approved by President Obama and 190 world leaders in September 2015, citizens of undeveloped countries in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East are seen as human capital to be shifted around the world like pieces on a chessboard. As migrants, they are granted the UN rights to access everything from jobs to affordable health care, affordable transportation, and housing in wealthy Western nations. Gosh, who would that be? The pilot program deal between the Lutheran Agency and JBS was signed in late August, and plans are eventually to roll it out to all 100-plus U.S. meatpacking operated by JBS.
Sounds like somebody to boycott.
Well, you've got to do something to stop this insanity. You just have to. This is detrimental to our sovereignty. It's going to affect our working class that can't work.
Makes us slaves.
Yep.
We have to pay their way.
When I look at the tax bill, I don't see, and I'm not a Democrat, but I don't see the average American really benefiting from this. You have to couple things together. And when you do, the picture gets very interesting.
Well, these foreigners become slave owners of the middle class American.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're importing jobs to America. That's a good thing, right? Huh? More jobs for Americans, but wait a minute. No. They're bringing the employees with them. And those employees are enjoying our natural resources.
And our free benefits.
Our government resources, you betcha. You betcha. And they, for the most part, are not going to assimilate into our society. They're in small towns, and that is purposeful. Big towns, it'd be very difficult for them to assimilate as easy as it is in small towns.
And they'll demand teachers that speak their language for their kids.
It'll put a burden on the education societies, and it'll be also be a burden on parents that have their children already in those educational societies. And we've heard horror stories already about some of these foreigners' children and what they're doing to American children. It's not pretty.
You mean like forcing kisses and hugs?
Or they go a little bit further than that.
Oh, I know.
And they like to film the experience while they're doing it. We are under siege. We're being attacked in America from all ends and internally. We talked about feminization earlier today. We have foreign influences coming into our nation on a daily basis. And people like our ex-vice president, who's encouraging more and more of this. What is it with we need to get more foreigners into America? Why would somebody want to do that, especially a politician? And the answer is for personal gain, right? Or for party gain? Are these immigrants coming in going to be Democrat voters? Or are they going to be Republican voters? And you have the example of Donald Trump standing up there, who resembles the cruel America that doesn't want, especially Muslims, coming into America. So, and they'll be shown that over and over again. Whether it's true or not, they're still going to be shown that. So what do? We're being educated. We know what's happening. Do we remain silent? This is a public opinion war we're in. And we're paying to import folks that don't hold the same beliefs that we do. Whether you're American or a Republican, they don't hold those beliefs. They don't even hold the same beliefs that most of the Democrats do. But yet they're going to vote for the Democrats. And then they're going to get their own representatives into office. Maybe in Michigan. Maybe the next governor up there is going to be favorable to a certain area of the population as versus other areas of the population. Not really concerned about the national American creed, but more attached to, let's say, a religious document or Sharia law, if you will. For evil to flourish, good men and women need only do nothing. But BJ, we can't do anything about it. If you don't do anything about it, I got 100% guarantee you won't be able to do anything about it if you don't do anything.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And I didn't learn that in college. I didn't. No, I didn't.
Just be quiet at the dinner table. Don't say nothing.
Stumbled about that all by myself. Oops, I forgot about the Parents' Right Amendment. Let's take a quick break, a quick station identification, and I'll talk about the Parents' Right Amendment, which is something that could be positive B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, WTVOradio.com.
I guess I got to come up with something.
Yeah, just a song's fine. Just a song's fine.
Look, we came, we saw, he died. We came, we saw, he died. Look, we came, we saw, he died. Look, we came, we saw, he died.
It's not a laughing matter. I take it really seriously.
Vote for me because I'm a woman. One of my merits is I'm a woman. All these mothers vote for me because I'm a woman. Because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm a woman. One of my merits is I'm a woman. All these mothers vote for me because I'm a woman. Because I'm a woman.
A woman running to be the first woman president.
I cannot imagine anyone being more of an outsider than the first woman president.
More of an outsider than a woman president.
I can't think of anything more of an outsider than electing the first woman president.
A woman president of the United States of America.
Station ID, WTVOradio.com, WNFFradio.com.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Hey, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. You got to laugh sometimes. Sometimes you got to go where you're not invited. Sometimes you got to laugh. Oh, man. The amount of money that they spent, that we know they spent on sexual harassment in government, $15 million. Boy, if this feminazi movement keeps up, whew, look for more of that by 10 or 100 times that. Wow. Parental Rights Amendment. HJ Resolution 121T is in Tom. U.S. Representative Randy Hutgren, Illinois. By the way, about 6 or 8 months ago, I was making calls to as many congressmen as I could. I have no idea whether this is a result of that or not. I don't know whether I ever find out because they get calls all the time, but I was basically telling them about the natural family and how it's important that we have one man, one woman in a committed relationship, and it's the foundation of societies. And the same old song that BJ sings. And again, I don't know whether this is a result of it, but I did say to them, it would be nice that if you could, every law that you passed, and this is what I said to them, every law that you passed would first consider the natural family. How will it affect it? Will it have a positive effect on it? If it has a positive effect on it, then by George, keep going. But if it's going to have a negative impact on it, no way. It'd be really nice. And I talked to some of the congressmen's offices, and some of them I got positive responses on. Again, I don't know whether this is a response to that. I'd like to think it is, so let's just say it is.
Okay, we'll go for that.
Parental Rights Amendment. House Resolution 121T. Representative Randy Hutgren, and he's from Illinois, of all places. I found out about this, and I called the office, and I said, hey, I think I'm interested in this bill. Can you give me more information? And I was sent a parental rights proposal that Rick Holgren is putting out to his fellow congressmen. And it basically says, Dear colleague, I invite you to become an original co-sponsor of the Parental Rights Amendment. and help preserve the long-standing traditional right of parents to direct upbringing and education of their children. Sounds good to me so far, doesn't it, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah.
The liberty of parents to guide and care for their children was once established beyond debate as an enduring American tradition. Wisconsin versus Yoder, 1972. Today, however, the role of parents has been gradually eroded and commandeered by faceless bureaucracy and impersonal judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I couldn't have written this better myself so far. Under the United States Constitution, fundamental parents' rights are not protected, leaving courts free to redefine, and interpret them as they wish. In the absence of a constitutional amendment defining parental rights as guaranteed fundamental rights, the role that parents play in the upbringing and education of their children will increasingly be up to the interpretation by the government. All of us, especially those who are parents, understand the value of parental rights and the positive impact that parental prerogative has on the success and well-being of our children. Parents are uniquely qualified, well, duh, and best suited. He didn't say, well, duh, there. Okay, I did. And best, where was it? Parents are uniquely qualified, best suited to make decisions for their children and capable of providing the positive influence of a stable and loving family that one-size-fits-all government policies cannot. I got excited when I'm reading this, okay? Please join me supporting the Parental Rights Amendment and reaffirm what the Supreme Court declared 90 years ago, that the child is not the mere creature of state. Those who nurture him or her and direct him or her destiny have the right, coupled with a high duty, to recognize and prepare him for additional obligations. Pierce versus Society of Sisters, 1925. The Parental Rights Amendment would place the existing Supreme Court doctrine that parental rights are fundamental rights into the text of the Constitution. Now, I have my concerns about constitutional amendments, okay? But, man, you might get me on this one. Clarifying educational choice is a fundamental right. Continue traditional Supreme Court doctrine allowing for extreme limited government involvement to prevent proven child abuse or neglect. Boy, Dr. Mario in Florida, wait till I get him this. Clarify the Parental Rights Amendment does not touch on abortion issue or end-of-life decisions. Uh-oh. If you would like to join me in making parental rights fundamental constitutional rights by supporting the Parental Rights Amendment, please contact Doug Thomas, that's in his office. Sincerely, Randy Hutgren, Member of Congress. Now, there's a sticker there, and I know there's going to be a lot of our audience are going to say, whoop, no way, that's it, it's done, it doesn't have that in it, sorry. Okay, I understand where they're coming from. But if a few of the questions that I'm asking to the congressman are answered, I'm sorry. I'm going to be in support in this. This is definitely a step in the right direction. And once we get the families established, and I understand the damage that abortion does. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. I also understand the damage that pornography does. And I also understand the damage that court systems have been doing to natural families, ripping them apart, putting them in unnatural families. I understand the damage of gay marriage. Okay? So here's what I said back, and I haven't got a response back, but it was over the Thanksgiving vacation, so I'll be following up Monday. Here's what I wrote back. Did you have any questions about that, Mr. Anderson, that I read? Anything come to mind that would be curious about?
Well, I one thing that wasn't said, which I'm glad, is that it didn't address a third gender there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it, that not being said is a step in the right direction as well. Maybe,
because this is very important. We're talking about a parental rights amendment.
Which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Which is huge.
But the devil is in the detail and the definition. And the first question go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we do have to look over their shoulder very carefully.
Yeah, they're politicians.
Mm-hmm.
They got in office by making people feel good about them. So if something makes the people feel uncomfortable, or they think it's going to make the people feel uncomfortable, guess where this is going? All right, here's a question. I think a good question to ask. Again, Parental Rights Amendment. First question, how do you propose to define the immediate family?
Good question.
And please be as specific as possible. What does it include, immediate family, and who might it exclude? For example, are parents required to be male and female? And will this definition be made clear in the proposed amendment? Define what you mean by parent rights. You pass a parent right amendment, and a gay couple comes up and says, oh, that includes me, and then they're going to cite a Bergefeld case, and you're nailed. You're nailed. Of course, if you cite this constitutional amendment as being the natural family, if they define it like we do, then the Supreme Court can come in and say, well, wait a minute, we already decided what a family was. And you can't redecide that, however you can. Have Supreme Court decisions ever been overturned? I think we have an opportunity here. And again, the gentleman's name is Randy Hultgren, Hultgren. He's a national congressional representative from Illinois, Randy, Hultgren. I'd love to have you folks contact the office and say, look, I think I'm very interested in what this bill is about, but can you give me more detail? And they'll probably send you the same thing they send me. And maybe you're going to have different questions. And please, I understand. Look, I think it's sad that this doesn't address abortion, but this bill isn't about abortion. It's about the family.
I think that can be addressed in other areas very simply, and it's been ignored, but 40, 45 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah,
but look, it just bothers me a little bit that we even have to have an amendment or a bill that states parent rights. I mean, why do we need the government to tell us what our rights are?
I understand that. And laws are to protect the innocent. That's one of the reasons we have laws, is protect the interest, the innocent. And you make a law to protect the family. That's what I'm asking for. If you have that, if we define it one man, one woman in a lifelong committed monogamous relationship, if we define the family that with their biological and or adopted children, if we establish that as the natural family, that's it. And then we come back in and say, well, wait a minute. If you're aborting a child, that's destroying the natural family. And you then would have standing. But right now you don't have any standing because a family can be defined any way you want it to be defined. And today's natural family is just that. It's anything but one man and one woman and their biological or adopted children. We have anything from one parent to, I don't know. I don't know what the record is for sets of parents. But I guess it's somewhere in the, maybe even the tens. But I'm not surprised if you find 4, 5, or 6 sets of parents. Or one parent. None of which are good for the child, naturally. And we can try to make it, well, it's diversity, it's multiculturalism, and it's okay, BJ. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. And we're reaping the wins from this. I'd love to find out the family history of the gentleman that, and I'm still looking, can't find it, of the gentleman who went into the church with a machine gun and shot it up and killed so many people. But the family backgrounds of these people, I think, would be very, very enlightening once we found out what that was. Any of these mass murders, the children in schools. There aren't very many mass murders in homeschooling that I understand. I haven't heard of one yet, Mr. Anderson. Have you?
Sorry, I was reading a chat.
Okay,
there.
yeah.
Would you ask me? Oh, you forgot.
Link is. I guess somebody wants me to post this. Why you can't post a link is, it's Bill HR 121. Okay, well, yeah. Can't post links here. Okay, all right. We'll have to work on that, Mr. Anderson. They're complaining about not being able to post links on the IM.
Yeah, YouTube does that.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah. So 614-423-4220. We're in the last hour, in the last 15 minutes of the last hour. Be more than welcome to have you call in and tell us what your opinion is on the family. I want to talk a little bit about Roy Moore when we come back from break. An interesting Facebook post that I saw, and finish up by talking about, again, the importance of the natural family and where we're really, really, really leaving out some very, very important people. Wow. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. WNFFradio.com, is that it?
You got it.
Wow, Natural Family Foundation Radio.com. Yeah.
There you go.
At least 13 people were arrested as hundreds blocked traffic on 2 major highways, waving Mexican flags and burning a giant effigy of Donald Trump. Police fired rubber bullets, and pepper spray at hundreds of protesters after the crowds took over major intersections.
Load up, load up, load up. Rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.
Fraud, homophobia, sexual assault, white supremacy.
In terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And a will to rest, to make things better, and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities.
White privilege!
Load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
We have a caller on line 1.
Right, caller. We live in an amoral society, so what can you expect? Who's calling in?
It's Silver.
Hey, Silver. How you doing, brother?
Excellent.
What's on your mind?
Well, I think that piece of legislation is a piece of junk.
Ah, okay.
Okay, because we're trying to restore back to what we had with additional law to bring us to where we came from? No. If we establish where we came from, that will not be necessary. Okay?
Ooh.
Supposedly a Christian nation. Okay? This was founded this way. The states had the religions, okay, that they decided were state religions, for lack of a better term.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And so this nation is primarily a Christian nation. Okay? And anything that's not in Judaic Christian, and I think the only reason Judaic is in there is because out of respect for the Hebrew, all right, because everybody is supposed to be Christian, okay? And to allow what we're doing as far as Islam in this nation, we're destroying our nation via that, okay? And until we get back to Christian values, all right, all the laws in the world mean nothing, okay, except God's law.
I agree with you, but the devil's in the detail. How do we get back to that?
Men start being men.
Well, okay, and I agree with that, but what is the process of men being men? Because right now we don't have to be men, and we're eating regular and got a nice roof over our head, and we have to give a few here and there, but that's okay. We got peace. How do we change that?
It ain't gonna last for long. I can tell you that right now.
I'm not going to argue with you, Silver. I'm not going to argue with that. And then I agree with what you're saying. And today's laws are tomorrow's morals. And I can go with you in terms of we really shouldn't have to put a law on the books that says the natural family should be protected. And one of the things that we want to do with the Natural Family Foundation is create an environment where natural families are appreciated. They aren't attacked. Every time we pass a law, it's against the natural family. We're in a public opinion war, and we're losing miserable. So how do we get the word out? Who do we get the word out to? What is the process? The devil's in the detail again. What is the process of getting to where I agree you want to be and where I want to be and Mr. Anderson wants to be? You still with us?
We have to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
We have to. Personally, we have to get our relationship right with the Lord, and meet with others that are of the same vein. Okay, and it's going to take, hopefully, not bloodshed, but it might, to restore this nation back to the way it was. Okay, I mean, and I'm willing to pay that price. And I took an oath a long time ago to defend this nation. That never got, even though I was discharged honorably, that oath never went away. It's still there. Okay? And I want my nation back. I mean, it is so far gone. I mean, I look at my children and we're talking about hugs and kisses. That's all my family is hugs and kisses. And it's pretty big. So I've got 2 grandchildren that are married. I keep pushing them to have some children, but they don't want to do it yet. And I said, what's the purpose of getting married? I got another grandchild who wants to finish school and all this stuff before they get married. And, I'm going, what? Just get married and have the kids and live your life. Quit wasting time.
When you have the kids, when you have the kids, that's when the education begins anyway.
Absolutely true. There's no argument on that one.
And it's quick.
I'm the oldest of 10, and I said, well, I ain't going to do that no more, And so I had 2. Now I've got 9 grandchildren, and 2.5 getting married, you might say. One waiting to finish school, kind of stuff. I'm going, this is nuts. Quit doing this. But we don't train properly our children in the values of man and women's duties and roles.
And I agree, brother. We're going to agree on everything, but you and I have the same problem, and that's the implementation of all this. How do we get from point A to point B? And one of the things that I hear that drives me crazy is, well, we have to do this very gradually and very slowly. We don't have the time for that.
We don't have the time. No, it's going to take a war. I'm sorry to say it, but it's probably going to take a war to do it.
Oof.
I know, and that's heavy.
And it's the other thing we could talk about is repenting. But to repent, my changes in my life came with pain, and I'm sorry to say that, but that's pretty much how not only I but everybody else does. Because I think part of it's because of where we are in America, where everything just comes easy to us. My goodness, I mean, if we want something to eat, all we have to do is pick up the phone, exercise our finger, and bingo, it's at our door.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty. God gives blessings, but with those blessings can sometimes be curses if you don't appreciate where they come from, which is what Thanksgiving was about, was appreciating God and what He has given to us as a nation, and we don't. And we're liable to pay that price, and there are signs of that happening now, huge signs that you're seeing, that I'm seeing, that Biker Bill is seeing, and everybody else that's listening to this program is seeing and hearing about. It's okay. We see it. We see the storm clouds, but sadly, that group of people you're talking about is small in numbers. It is a remnant. It's small in numbers, and short of God's intervention, and I want to avoid that because it's like you say, it's not going to be very pretty. Short of God's intervention, I don't know what's going to turn this around. A national disaster, but that's God's intervention.
Yeah.
You got 2 minutes. Final words on that. Your advice.
Pray.
Okay.
Get your relationship with the Lord correct.
Yep.
Rededicate your life to the Lord if necessary.
Okay.
Okay. See what is coming and take the action necessary to protect your families.
Great advice.
That's probably one. Okay, but the big thing is pray. Get your relationship with the Lord back in line. Repent if you have to.
Well, doesn't God hear the prayer of the righteous?
You ain't righteous if you ain't repented.
Right. And there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people been praying, brother. But it's all on God's timings, and it's His will be done. And sometimes it doesn't look like it's working, but behind the scenes, there's a construction area going on. And if you're really sage and really with God, you can hear the pounding, and you get in the welding. But most of us don't hear that or see that, brother. Bill Miller says prayer is firing the winning shot. And I agree with that.
I agree with that.
Silver, thank you very much for your call today. Don't be a stranger. We always welcome input from our audience. Appreciate you.
I was a little busy last weekend. I'd have been here, but I was a little busy.
Taking care of all those kids, right?
No, he's. I think it was one of Coach's ventures.
Oh, you were in Texas.
Yeah.
Working on
houses. I'm in Texas. Yeah, you bet. I ain't gonna miss any of those.
There you go.
I hear
that was a blessing. I mean, that was church like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, making church great again.
I hear you, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks again for the call.
Are you welcome? God bless.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. Mr. Silver. And Biker Bill, we always appreciate your comments. We don't get a chance to comment back at you.
It's hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah.
We've had some good comments on the chat line today.
Yeah, we have. We got
Don and Biker Bill, and got two Dons on here.
I'm going to read this real quick, and then we're going to bid you good day and go Bucks.
Go Blue.
I've debated in posting for a while. I generally do not get involved Facebook drama, Facebook politics, Facebook rants. I just use it for my business and to connect with long-distance family and friends. However, lately I've found it near impossible to ignore. You see, the man most of you are so easily bashing, belittling, accusing, and slandering is my uncle. He's not a distant uncle that I never see or talk to. He's the man who, when his father passed away at the age of 49, told his oldest son to always take care of your mom and your sisters, including my mom. He never left them, always living very close. He's the man who calls his mother every day and sees her almost every day. He's the man who tried to fill in as a father figure to his siblings since they were left without one. He's the man who took his 12-year-old younger sister and her friends to the mall so they could hang with their friends, but was too protective to just leave them, so he hung out there waiting for them to finish. He's a man who loves his family. He's a man who, even in the midst of the awful attack on his character and his family, still answers the phone when I call and says, "Hey." He's the one that hears my sons talking and stops his busy world to tell them to be good to his mom and how smart he is and how much he loves them. He's the man who stayed with my mom and me and my brother and sister because he was scared and my dad worked out of town. He's the man that brought his dates to meet me. He's the man that always was perfect gentleman and taught all of his nieces what to require in a husband. He also married me to my first spouse, teaching us the godly way to be husband and wife, but to always put God first in our marriage, and it will last. He's the one, etc., etc., etc. This is the relative of Roy Moore. Not brother, not sister, but the nephew or the niece or the cousin. Family. Not just mother and father, but the entire family. The clan, if you will. Speaking on behalf of Judge Roy Moore. And we wish him the best, and we wish you the best, and wish the Buckeyes the best. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVOradio.com, WNFFradio.com. Thanks for listening today. God bless you. Have a great, great weekend.
Join us next week on WTVOradio.com for Last Call with B.J. Edwards.